Hello, everyone, and welcome. Really good to have you here. We're always asking where you're from. So please write to us in the chat where you are coming in from, and we will start in about 30 seconds. Wow. So we have people from California, Manhattan, Bosnia, New Zealand. What time is it there? Must be pretty early. Spain, Brazil, Scotland, Peru, Long Island, Bolivia, San Francisco. Wow, that's amazing. Great to have you here. Thank you so much. I'm very excited today. But before I tell you why I'm so excited, a few words of introduction. So this is our third or fourth conversation that we have here at the Happiness Studies Academy. We hold these events from time to time, once a month or once every other month. To learn more about the Happiness Studies Academy, you can follow us on Instagram and get more details for the next event, which is coming up in January. Now, at the Happiness Studies Academy, we have the Certificate in Happiness Studies, which is a year-long experience in helping you become happier and helping others become happier. Our next cohort is in February of 2022, and I'm very excited to announce that we are in the midst of getting accredited for a master's degree in happiness studies, which we hope to launch in the middle of 2022. But all that aside, and I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, my dear friend, Peter Bregman. He's recognized as the #1 executive coach in the world by leading global coaches. He works with CEOs, senior leaders in many of the world's leading organizations. He started his career teaching leadership on wilderness and mountaineering expeditions, hands-on leadership. He's the CEO of Bregman Partners. It's an executive coaching company that helps successful people become exceptional leaders and, no less important, stellar human beings. The book we're going to talk about, Peter has published numerous books. The book we're going to talk about today, or start talking about, is titled, You Can Change Other People. He's a regular contributor in the Harvard Business Review, and he's the host of the widely acclaimed Bregman Leadership podcast. So I'm glad to welcome you, Peter.
Thank you. It is so great to be here. I'm your biggest fan, Tal. And as I said before the show, I missed you. I haven't seen you in too long, but thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this new metaverse that soon we'll be able to be in the same room as if, but it's not the same as the real thing. So I look forward to seeing you in 3D live in person.
I am too.
Peter, you can change other people. As soon as I saw this, I said, wow, this is incredible, because, I think we all struggle with change. Even changing ourselves is difficult. And changing other people seems so much more so. And yet we wouldn't be doing what we're doing without, at the very least, the hope that we can change other people, whether it's as coaches, whether it's as teachers, whether it's as, parents, because why bother if you can't change anyone? So say more, please, help.
Yeah, I mean, it occurred to me that every time you're struggling with someone and someone good-natured advice tells you, hey, Tal, you can't change other people, okay? You can only change yourself. They're trying to change you. Like they're telling you you can't change other people in order to try to change how you're going about something. And it's true. Like, I coach, this is what I do for a living. You teach and coach, and like, we're in this in order to help people change. So So it felt to me like and to my co-author, Howie Jacobson, that it doesn't fit. And that the problem isn't that you can't change other people. The problem is that the way we try to change other people backfires. And, something that I've thought about a lot and have often said is people don't resist change. They resist being changed. That I will change all the time, but you try to change me and I'm going to fight that. And every time we try to change other people, we tend to do it in ways that make them feel like we're trying to change them, and that incites the kind of resistance that we then throw our hands up and say, you know what, you can't change other people.
So do you think it's that kind of resistance that is responsible for the failure of most change efforts? You think it's that kind of approach to trying to change other people? Because, let me just throw something up in the air now, which is, Daniel Goleman, who wrote Emotional Intelligence in the mid-90s, in 2001 published a book called Primal Leadership, which is about essentially taking the soft skills and introducing them in organizations. And he writes there explicitly that based on his research and others' research, 90% of change efforts fail.
Right.
Is that responsible for this sobering statistic?
Yeah, so I actually think it is. I actually think that we lead people to resistance to change and organizational change efforts. So if you look at, I used to, I run my own company, but I used to work with Accenture and I used to work with the Hay Group, and my focus was on managing change and driving change, right? That was the thing. And every organization I ever worked with does the same thing. They create training programs and they create communication plans. And the idea is, I'm going to sell you on it. I'm going to tell you what's in it for you. And then I'm going to take you through the change curve, right? And every change curve is some version of, the 7 stages of change. And I, as a young consultant, I just sort of blindly did that. Like I just sort of took people through. And then I started thinking, wait a second. Where does this come from? Why do we assume that everybody goes through these stages of change? Where does this come from? And you know where it comes from, right? I mean, it comes from one book that identified all of this, right? Which was Kubler-Ross on death and dying. So we basically said when people are dying or someone who they really love are dying, these are the stages of change that we're going to go through. Now, we're going to apply that to organization, because when people change in organizations, it's like death and dying. Like it didn't compute for me. It didn't make sense. And then I realized it kind of does, though, because the constant between death and dying and organizational changes, you're faced with a change that you have no control over, that is being forced upon you, that you may or may not like, and that you're sort of stuck feeling like, you have no choice. And then I sort of said, well, then that's problematic, because that's true with cancer, possibly, but it's not true with organizational change. We could lead organizational change in completely different ways, where people have tremendous amount of choice, where we could create boundaries and we can open things up. And like the things we try to control, because we're trying to move people through the change, we can let go of and get much looser with, and let people have much more agency in their lives. And then we're not going to lead them to the kind of resistance that they end up facing. And my experience with change has not been 90% has failed, but it's because I've really, like, the whole coaching idea is different, sure. Which is, it's I'm not controlling you. I'm helping you get to where you want to go.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to start going through, if not the 7 steps to change that we all, learn about at the beginning of our practicing, to go through maybe some steps that we can take. And let me offer one, which I see as the first one, doesn't necessarily have to be the first one, which is, first of all, believing that change is possible. We're many of us here on this call are familiar with the work of Carol Dweck and the growth mindset. So what she shows, what her research shows, is that even if we just learn about the fact that our brain changes, and again, this is a fact that we're aware of today. Until 1998, most people believed that change was not possible, that our brain doesn't actually change. But since 1998, we're in the know. Our brain changes until the day we die. And it turns out that people who just learn this fact, who learn about neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, just knowing that in and of itself opens us up to change, the growth mindset. So I'm assuming this is a first step, or at least one of the steps towards bringing about change. What other things that can we do when we teach? And again, when I say when we teach as coaches, as professors, as parents.
I want to offer a pre-step to that step. And I love Carol Dweck, like as a thinker and as a human being. She's, an amazing person. I think a pre-step to I believe I can change is I want to change, or there's some change I want to make, right? Because I think we have to sort of think about what is the outcome I want? Where am I headed? Do I want to do something? And I think about, I just want to talk about my son, who might come up a lot. He's 14 years old and delightfully oppositional and an amazing kid, right? An amazing kid. And I could coach, I could give you the names of people that I've coached who are, the most well-known CEOs. And I do it really, really well. I cannot get my handle around my 14-year-old son. I really struggle with this. And it's only recently where I'm like, okay, I've got to just use the methodology I use with like the president of Citibank. Let me use it with my 14-year-old son. And usually what I'll do is I'll go to him and I'll say, I'll convince him that he can change, or, this growth, this is what I've said to him so many times, this growth mindset that you have with athletics, he's parkour. He could stand here and do a backflip, right? He's incredibly physically adept, and he will work on it for hours and hours and hours until you do it. But he'll work on a math problem for 30 seconds and be like, I can't do it. And I'm saying to him, look, this growth mindset you have with athletics, it works the same way with math, right? And he says to me, Dad, math is nothing. There's nothing similar between math and parkour. And I'm like, no. But anyway, so I'm trying to convince him that he can change. And then I say, hold on, do you care about math? And he'll say, no, I don't. What do I need math for? I know how to do the math that I need to do. I need to know algebra. How am I ever going to use algebra? Right. So, I could have that conversation with him and convince him maybe, right, which wouldn't work, because as soon as I try to convince him of something, he's going to fight back. So it starts with me with this thing that says, do you want this thing or do you not want this thing? And if you don't want this thing, it's a non-starter, because it doesn't matter if you can get it or not. If you don't want it, you're not going to go for it. So the first conversation is, what is it that you want? Where do you want to go? Are you interested in going there? I think the second conversation is, do you believe you can get from point A to point B?
Nice. Yeah, I love that. So I have a question, but before I get there, in about 20 minutes, we'll open it up to your questions. So if you do have any questions, put your hand up. Below you can press the button there with reactions. Put your hand up, or you can send your message through the chat, and would love to hear from you. Okay, so many questions. Based on what you said. First of all, before we go to stage 3, and I want to go to stage 3, because we have the first stage, you want to change, to you believe you can change. We'll get to 3 in a second. But is it more difficult to change certain people than others? Because, I was thinking, as you were talking, I'm thinking, I want to barter with Peter. I'll change his son. He can change my son. So is it more difficult to change people close to you?
Yeah, I think yes. I think as the relationship gets more entangled, the harder it is. I often think, and I'll say this, to a board or to people, it is much easier for, I could say, yeah, whatever, I do a lot of coaching, and it is much easier for me to come in as a coach where someone's paying me and they want me to help them. And they believe that I can, and I come with these credentials. And my daughter, I have this plaque that I was given when I was labeled #1 leadership coach, and I hide it behind a painting. And my daughter says, "Why don't you put it out front?" And I said, first of all, what does that even mean? Like, how does anyone know if I'm the number one coach? Like, I mean, I got it and it's great and I like it, but I mean, it's like, it means something, but not what you think it means. And then the second of all is, if I have it up front, will you listen to me more? Because I'll do that if that helps. Like if we put it there, and she's like, I mean, she's actually, someone who does somewhat listen to me, but absolutely. The other thing is, with our children especially, I think we are so often, even though we love them more than anything, we are so often in this adversarial role a little bit. We want what's best with them. It's a great question, Tal, because we fall into what makes this so hard, right? When I teach coaches, I'm often saying, like, just use your coaching methodology on your loved ones. But we never do, really, because we care so much. I care so much that my kids are successful, and that gets in my way.
Wow.
Right? I have to let them fail. I have to say, is this something you want? If this isn't something you want, I had a great conversation with my daughter where something happened, and I don't want to go into all the details, but something happened, and I said, and I followed the step one of the process, right? Which is empathize, express confidence, and ask permission. Right? And I said, I see you just did this thing. I know how tough it is for you. I'm in that situation also. And I know I've seen you act differently, so I know you can. And I have some level of experience with this. Do you want to think about it together? And she said, no. She said, thank you. Right? But she said, thank you for asking, but no.
Yeah. So she empathized with you. And then
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what I said was really important after that. I said, okay, not a problem. If you ever do, I'm happy to, but this isn't about me. This is about you. Totally your call. That afternoon, she came back and she said, hey, can we talk about this thing now? Because at that point, it was her choice. It wasn't me trying to control something. It was her saying, yeah, I'm now in control here and I'll have this conversation. And by the way, I'll have it as long as when I'm ready to stop and I say, stop, you stop. And I say, okay, you're in control. It's not, I'll be in service to you, but I'm not leading this. It's your choice.
Yeah, love that. Okay, I'm actually going to try and use that later on today. Let's get to the third thing. What else do we need to put in place?
So, if you think about what people need in order to change, there's 4 things, right? They need ownership. We've been talking a lot about that, right? They need their ownership. They need independent capability. They need to be able to follow through on the change in a very simple way. They need to be able to do it. They need what I call emotional courage. The book before this, I wrote about emotional courage that you and I have spoken about. And that's the willingness to feel things. That it's hard to change in a sense because we're going to feel things. If I'm going to change, and something as simple as my eating habit, if I'm going to stop eating sugar, I'm going to feel longing for sugar. Now, by the way, this is something really subtle but important. When I'm feeling longing for sugar, that's actually a painful feeling. That's pain. I want something, I'm not getting it. When I eat the sugar, it is not a move to fulfill the longing. It's a move to negate the longing, right? When I'm eating the sugar, I'm not fulfilling I'm not giving the longing what it wants. I'm doing something I can so that I no longer feel that painful behavior of longing. Instead, I feel the behavior of like failing on my commitment and overstuffed and, headachy, but I no longer feel the pain of longing for this thing. So we think we're following the draw of a feeling, but we're actually trying to get rid of the pain of that feeling. And emotional courage is the willingness to feel things. If I want to have a difficult conversation, everybody who's listening, think of a difficult conversation that you're not having, right? A conversation that you should have, but you haven't followed through on. And think about why. I bet you know everything you need to know. I bet you're perfectly capable of doing it. And I bet you've had time and opportunity. And by the way, we were talking about organizational change beforehand. That's what we try to solve for. We go in, we train people and we educate them and we time management and prioritize. That's what but that is not what stops us from following through on what's important to us. What stops us is the willingness to feel. If you have that difficult conversation, you might have to feel their anger. You might have to feel that you're hurting them. They might come back at you. You might have to feel their defensiveness. You might have to feel the weird passive aggressiveness where after you give them feedback, they say, thank you. And then they don't talk to you for 3 weeks. Like you might have to feel all of this stuff. And if you are willing to feel everything, if you're willing to feel the anger and the shame and the defensiveness and the passive aggressiveness, if you're willing to feel everything, then you can do anything. So we need ownership, we need independent capability, we need emotional courage, the willingness to feel things, and we need what Howie and I called future proofing, which is, the resilience to tackle more and more difficult problems. So that's what we need in order to change. If we are in the position of offering it to someone, of supporting someone and helping them, we have to, at the very least, not take those things away from them, which is what we often do when we try to change. We take away ownership. We do it for them or get someone else to do it. We take away independent capability. We try to make it easy for them so that they don't need emotional courage. And then as soon as they hit the first hiccup, they struggle and they fall down. So we have to, at the very least, do no harm, take that away from them. Like that already covers 50% of change that, fails. And then second is we have to help people increase their ownership. We have to help them increase their emotional courage, increase their capability, increase their resilience. And we do that through, what Howie and I sort of articulated as these 4 steps, right? Which is shift from being a critic to being an ally. That's the first thing. It's like when we come in and we tell someone they're doing something wrong, or we give them feedback, or we're always showing up as critics. And what we do to critics is we do this. Someone's going to hit me, I'm going to put my arms up and I'm going to try to stop them. So we have to shift our own intent. What's my intent? Am I coming in here to support you and help? I see this with my own wife, with Eleanor, who you've met and who's the loveliest person in the world, right? And so if I'm frustrated with something, and I realize that underneath that frustration is fear. Underneath that frustration is love and care. And if I don't get in touch with my own fear and my own love and my own care, then I'm just going to be upset that she's not doing the thing that I want her to do. But it's because I'm threatened, right? And if I approach it in this way of conquering my threat with my wife, how do you think that's going to go? Not very well. Right. So it's about stopping and going, okay, I want something for both of us. I want something for her and I want something for both of us. So I need to connect with my love and my care and imagine her positive intent, because she has positive intent too in whatever she's doing. And then step into a collaborative conversation with her that she wants to be in with me, not that she feels attacked by me. And that's step 1. That's really, really important.
So that's about moving from a critic to an ally, which may be a bit more difficult, as you pointed out earlier, with people who are close to us, be
exactly.
it again, our partner or our children.
Exactly. It is absolutely the hardest. I mean, it's so counterintuitive, but it is hardest with the people that we're closest to.
Yeah. So we're in this together. We're on the same side.
Right.
Step 2.
Step 2 is to go from problem, and this is such a simple step, but we often miss it, to go from problem to outcome. So instead of saying, okay, let's dive into this problem. What's the problem? What's not working, etc. Ask the question, what's the outcome you want? This is like the number 1 question I ask my clients every single time I'm in conversation with them. They always come with a problem. And my first question is always, what is the outcome you want? What are you going for?
Can you give a concrete example of an actual problem that a client came up with?
Yeah,
and how
sure.
You reframed it?
Yeah, so someone comes to me and says, I've got someone who's a real problem on my team. This person talks over people. They're argumentative. They're disrespectful. They're aggressive. They're a problem on my team. Right? So if we just want to solve the problem, here's an easy one. Fire them. Like, just get them off your team. Done. No more person, no more problem. right? And it reminds me of this great scene in Silicon Valley. I don't know if you know the TV show Silicon Valley, but the Silicon Valley is this very, very funny, somewhat inappropriate, but very, very funny TV show on, I can't remember what channel it's on. But their code, the short story of it is they're creating a code to run a separate kind of internet, right? Like an alternative internet. And they're creating all this code. And they were powering an entire city in the desert with this code. And there were some bugs in the code. So they sent the head engineer to fix the bugs in the code. And the head engineer goes in and does some stuff. And then suddenly all of the lights in the entire city go out. And the CEO goes, "What happened?" And he said, it was the AI. This was a lot of work to do to get the bugs out of the code. So I just told the AI, get the bugs out of the code. And the AI did the most efficient thing, which is, in order to get the bugs out of the code, the fastest thing to do is to just delete the code, right?
Yeah.
No code.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, right, exactly. So the easiest thing to do is to get rid of this person, no more problem. But the question I asked wasn't, how do we solve this problem? The question I asked is, what is the outcome you want? What are you going for? And at first, the client says, the outcome I want is like no more disruption. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a high enough bar. What will that give you? For the sake of what? Right? And after a couple of questions, the answer is, I want a high-performing team. Like, what I really want is a high-performing team. And this person is disrupting my high-performing team. Okay, so now we have an outcome, a high-performing team. The answer still might be get this person off the team, but I don't know that yet, because we're at step 2 now. And step 2 is, we've got an outcome that is, by the way, not frustrating like the problem, but energizing. I'm excited about a high-performing team. Yes. I'm not excited about a problematic person I have to have a difficult conversation with. I'm excited about a high-performing team. So step 1 is be an ally. Step 2 is focus on the outcome. Step 3, do you have any questions about that, or should I jump to step 3?
No. I have I think a comment about the second step, because one of the things that we talk about a lot in our courses, part of the field of happiness studies, is appreciative inquiry. And appreciative inquiry is about changing the questions from focusing on what doesn't work to focusing on what does. And the impact of it is first and foremost energetically, in that it inspires, in that, when I think about not making mistakes, it's very different from thinking of what I want to achieve, of where I want to go. And it seems like your step 2, which, from problem to outcome, attains similar outcome, in that it energizes, it focuses us on what is it that we want, rather than avoidance goals, outcome goals.
100%. And that's true of each of the 4 steps. So critic, negative; ally, positive;
absolutely,
problem, negative; opportunity, positive. So we're taking this dredgy, frustrating, annoying thing, and at each step, related to the happiness studies, at each step, we're still solving for it. You're going to see in the 3rd step, we go back to the problem to solve for it, but we're solving for it by shifting our attention towards the thing that is hopeful, energizing, opportunistic.
Love it. So what's the 3rd step?
So the 3rd step is opportunity, is finding the hidden opportunity. And that step is, you still have the problem, right? We still have this person on the team who's disruptive. That still exists. So I could look and see this exciting outcome, but now I still have this issue. So now we want to look at that and say, where is the opportunity in this problem? So you're now looking at this person and saying they are disruptive, they're aggressive, they're, a problem. And now we have an outcome, which is a high-performing team. So how might this person be useful to us getting to a high-performing team? And one of the questions we might ask is, what is good about this person's bad behavior? So we're not saying, what's good about this person? I know what's bad about them. What's good? We're not saying, yeah, they're disruptive, but they mean well. Or they're disruptive, but they dress really appropriately. Like, we're not looking for 2 sort of disconnected themes. We're saying, given what might be positive about this problematic behavior. So after a few questions, it comes out, we're a very, part of the reason it's so disruptive to us is we all get along. We're very peaceful. We do not like to rock the boat. This team in general, works very hard to be at peace, which also makes us complacent because we don't get into conflict that we need to get into because conflict is going to be disruptive. But you can't have a high-performing team unless you also have conflict. So now I can look at this person who's disruptive and say, hey, they might be the key to helping our team become high-performing. And maybe this person needs a dose of us, but we probably also need a dose of her or him, right? That we need a dose. If we were all as brave as this person is to raise the elephants in the room and force conversations that need to have, and this person was a little bit politer and more adept at doing it in a way that doesn't turn people off, if we could both meet, we would have an unbeatable team. We would be unbeatable. So you find the hidden, critic to ally, energizing outcome. Now you find the hidden opportunity in the problem that you can then help you use to get to the outcome.
The specific case study that you chose reminds me of an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote back in 1841 on friendship. And he wrote, "In a friend, I'm not looking for a mush of concessions, a person who will agree with everything that I say. Rather, what I'm looking for is a beautiful enemy, a person who will challenge me, who will help me in my apprenticeship to the truth." So in a sense, the opportunity here, we have a beautiful enemy. And this applies so much, again, to the most intimate relationships, because inevitably, after the honeymoon phase, after our kids begin to talk, we'll have some conflict. How can we learn to see them as allies, as beautiful enemies to us, helping us grow?
I love it. And I would never contradict Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Yes.
That's not a winning proposition.
No.
but I agree 100%. And it's, one of the things that I like about this, and I've done, and this reminds me, just having this conversation with you, I want to go through the course again, that I went through the online course in happiness, is that this process that helps us shift the dynamic with someone from negative to positive also shifts our own energy from negative to positive. Like if I'm a critic, that's not good for the other person, but it's also not good for me. It is not good for me to be a critic. Like I'm frustrated and I'm angry and I'm annoyed. And as soon as I shift to ally, my whole energy and state of mind changes. And when I'm helping them find the outcome, it's very easy, and coaches get caught up in this all the time. I'm going to empathize so much for you in the problem that I'm going to take it on with you. And we're going to both sit here and we're going to go, step by step into how frustrating it is, and the system's terrible and the organization is terrible. And how could that person even still be working there? And we will work ourselves into a frenzy, and you will feel like you have an ally, but in the worst possible way. Because my allyship drives you into a hole instead of helps you get out of the hole.
Yeah.
And we do that all the time
down
in the helping profession. Yeah. So we have
Fantastic.
to be allies in a way that helps people, and that helps us too.
Yeah. When you say it's good for us and for them on two levels. First of all, it's good because we feel better. We experience more happiness, if you will. And two, because we're more effective as coaches, as parents and partners.
100%.
Peter, we're gonna get to the fourth one. Before we have quite a few questions in the chat. If you want to put your hand up so that we can also call on you and you can join us in our virtual living room, we'd love to hear your voice and see you. Otherwise, we'll take questions from the chat. Peter, we have the fourth one left.
Okay, so the fourth one is what we call a level 10 plan. And all of this stuff up till now has been great. I hope it's been great, but we're solving problems. We're shifting from negative to positive. We're finding opportunities. We're looking at outcomes. It's been a great and fun conversation, but that's all unless there's action taken. And from a coaching perspective or from a change other people, it's not about attitudes. From my perspective, from Howie's perspective, it's about action, right? And so, the way I define coaching is helping clients get massive traction on their most important work, not change their opinions about their most important work, right? But actually get stuff done. And that requires a plan. It requires action. And a level 10 plan means creating a plan that on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being least confident, 10 being most confident, you are a 10 on follow through. We don't care whether the plan works or not. That's not the most important thing. Like, of course, it would be good to have a plan that works. And it's important, to try to get to a place where a plan works. But ultimately, what we're going for is you have a plan you can follow through on, so you can take certain steps and you can be a scientist in how you approach it. And you can look and see what works and what doesn't. But we're going for movement. We're going for action. We're going for change of some sort. So it's like, let's create a plan that comes from you, right? Remember, the ownership is really critical. If I give you a solution that has 100% chance of success, that will be less successful than if you follow your own solution that has a 60% chance of success, because you will work much harder to make your solution effective and successful than you will my solution.
Peter, I have to share with you what I felt as soon as you said that, about the focus being not on it being a successful plan, but rather a plan that you're 100% sure that you will follow up on. I felt relief. Because there is so much pressure. There's so much pressure to succeed. And here you're taking that pressure away. It's liberating. It says because we all know that we can follow through. We can do it. Success or not success, that's a different story. That's up to so many factors. But to do it, and the thing is, to approach it as a scientist, when you go into an experiment, you don't know what the outcome will be. It's an experiment. It reminds me of Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography. Subtitle is My Experiments with Truth, not my finding truth, not the ultimate truth, my experiments with truth. Right. And he did okay as a leader. So it's really liberating.
Exactly right. When someone says to me, well, do you think this is going to work? My answer is, I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. Let's come back. We'll meet and we'll talk about it. The other thing that it does is it takes away this dynamic that I, the person who's helping, know the answer. And hopefully you can execute in a way that makes my brilliant ideas work, but I don't know, but I know the answer. And what you're saying, this move, which gives them even more ownership, is to say, I don't know, maybe this is going to work, maybe it's not going to work, but we're going to try some stuff and we're going to see. And there's a million variables. There's a million reasons why it might or might not work. Let's see. And then let's learn from whatever we've seen. And then let's try something else. Because this game of life is about trying things and seeing whether they work. It's not about winning and getting the answer.
Love it. Wow, Peter, again, I have a million more questions. However, I will open it up to others as well. So we have a hand up. Renata Jacobson, if you can unmute yourself, if you can also switch the video on, you don't have to. Renata?
Yes, I'm hearing.
Hi.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. How are you? Well, I'm really in bed, so therefore it will be a little bit complicated to show myself to everyone. But what I want to say is exactly I'm trying to do that with a program about lifestyle and change habits. Indeed, habits, food habits, our habits to eat, they are very bad. And then I'm trying to do this thing, and I am at the moment I'm having a little bit succeed. I'm successful at the moment. So we will see, but everything is an expectation, as I heard, and trying to do things and try to be happy. Perhaps in February, following your course, I will see. Anyway, at the moment is a little bit better because I was really struggling for a couple of months.
So Renata, the challenge that you're facing is changing eating habits. Is that what you're?
Yes, exactly. I'm living in Germany, and really, indeed, in Germany, we have very bad habits. Especially, we don't eat healthy food because we deliver everything at home, and I'm against that principle.
Renata, you should move to America. We eat the healthiest food in America.
Well, you're right.
You have your solution.
Change.
Yeah, McDonald's. Well, it's not in Germany.
Well, in Germany, perhaps is as bad as America.
That sounds more like it.
So
well, Peter, trying is a thing. Huh? You see, there's a lot of things that you have to change, and as I heard from you, really, it is not only a thing of result; it's a thing of effort. I heard that before in the book, so it's good. We learn every day.
So Peter, what recommend? Thank you, Renata. So Peter, what recommendations? Do you have specific ones for food habits? Because I'm sure certainly most of us here on this call, to some extent, are dealing with what Renata is describing.
Yeah, and I am too. So I want to say two things. And one, with your permission, Tal, I was just, as Renata was asking, I was looking at who is on this call, and I see that Howie Jacobson, who is the top health coach that I know, who works with people on eating habits all the time, is here. So he may have something to add to this conversation, and I think it could be very. Actually, let me just pause and say, Howie, do you have a few sentences here or thoughts that you would want to share?
Yeah, hi, Tal.
Hi, Howie. Good to see you.
Longtime fan, first time caller. Yeah, I mean, let's put it in the context of the 4 steps. So when someone comes to me and they're struggling, and Renata, I'm guessing maybe, being in bed, I guess it's late at night, but, thinking like maybe if there's health problems that are compelling you, we're going to focus on, I've got to eat better so that I avoid these health problems, or so that I lose weight, or I stop feeling bad. So let's immediately go to the outcome you want. And very often when people have health issues, we have to work a little bit harder to get them to something that's positive and meaningful. So it's like, I want to be healthier because I don't want to die, or I don't want to be sick. Well, for the sake of what? What would you want instead? I want a life that's, full. I want to be able to make contributions. I want to be a good role model for my kids and my grandkids. Let's get in touch with that outcome, because then we can start framing. Because what happens is there's a moment, like, Renata, you know what to do. You know what to eat and what not to eat. Maybe there's some details you're unsure of, but there's a moment at which you're either gonna have the junk food from the takeout, or you're going to make something healthy or make a healthier choice. And at that moment, if we had the outcome in mind of, I want to be a good role model for my children, or I want to be engaged in life and not on autopilot, then we can bring that value into the moment and make that kind of choice with a lot more power than if we're doing sort of the behavioral economics of, I'm going to give up pleasure now so that I can have what I want in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, that's great. So again, it's changing the energy around that thing which I'm trying to solve for.
Yeah, and I'd love to add one thing too, which is I often feel like there is a massive difference between motivation and follow through, and this fits very, very well around eating habits. Because you could be I hear you as very motivated, right? You wouldn't have raised your hand on this question, and you raised your hand in like the first 5 minutes of this conversation. So this was something that's been on your mind, right? That this is like not a little thing. So I'm going to say you're 100% motivated on this. And motivation is a mind issue. Motivation is, how am I feeling about something? What am I thinking about it? Follow through is the opposite problem of motivation. Follow through is, I'm going to stop thinking about this and I'm just going to do it. So at the point at which you're looking at a brownie or a stalk of broccoli, right? That's not a motivation issue. That's a follow-through issue. That's a decision to say, I already made the decision. I'm going to eat the broccoli and not the brownie, and I'm not going to dip the broccoli in the brownie. Like, I've already decided that I'm not going to eat the brownie. I'm going to eat the broccoli. So I'm not going to engage my mind in it. I'm not going to try to rah-rah myself or motivate myself. This is follow-through. I made the decision. Never quit a diet while you're reading the dessert menu, right? Always quit it in the morning when you're fresh and you're ready and you're like, okay, what do I want for today? Make the decision and then you follow through. And so I would think of this also as like, where are the opportunities to really, engage your follow through muscle, which is a little bit of emotional courage too. The willingness to feel the longing for the brownie and not follow through.
Yeah, I feel that longing right now, I must say. Thanks for that, Peter.
Now that I told you to dip your broccoli in a brownie, that really did it for you, didn't it?
Win-win.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renata, and thank you, Howie, for your help on this. Let's move on. Lou, you have your hand up. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, thank you very much. It's really very, very interesting. One of the most interesting Zooms I've been on. So my question is, I've been reading this book by Lisa Barrett on emotions. And it's on my mind. So I thought, have you incorporated, how does her approach affect your thinking on the subject or in your practice?
So I love Lisa Feldman Barrett, right? I love her. I think she's awesome. Tell me specifically what you're, because she writes, it's a big book, and how emotions are made. And she's she's, I think, a brilliant thinker. But tell me,
the construction of emotions and affect. I'm not sure I quite understand it as yet. I'm only halfway through the book.
I'm not an expert. And Tal, you might be more of an expert. I don't know how well you know her work. I'm a fan, but not an expert. But she really, my understanding of it is she really, really looks at emotions physiologically, right? That it's like the physical reaction it's like, do you have an emotion first and then a physical reaction, or do you have a physical reaction first and then an emotion around that? And just like, what's the tripwire to it? And she talks a lot about that. And I think her research is terrific to the extent that I understand it and I know it. And again, I'm not an expert, but I would say that it's my focus is always on implementation, on execution, on in the moment, what's happening. And at that moment, it doesn't make a huge difference to me, because I know that, there's some space to say, I'm going to interpret a sensation in my body that I then label as longing, but maybe it's not longing. Maybe it's, an itchy, vibrating feeling on the top left shoulder of my right shoulder. And I interpret that as longing. And so maybe if I could disconnect my interpretation of that with that feeling, and I can say, what am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling itchy, but I'm not going to dip my broccoli in brownie just for that. The one thing you guys are all going to remember from this conversation is dipping broccoli in brownie. Tal, do you have a thought around it?
Yeah, I do. So just to build on what you said, Peter, the thing about emotions is that they are amoral. In other words, there is no good or bad emotion. There are simply emotions. So I can experience envy or anger or fear, and there's nothing bad about these emotions. It's simply a fact, like the law of gravity is a fact. The question is, how can I lead a life where my emotions, those that we associate with, the painful emotions, are not dictating what I do? And the paradox here, and Peter pointed this earlier, is that when we accept the emotions and just say, okay, here they are, when we have courage to endure them, that is when we're in the best position to act in the most appropriate way. So paradoxically, for example, if I fully accept that sometimes I feel envy, that's when I'm in the best position to act benevolently and generously towards another person. It's actually when I have no courage, as Peter put it, to experience that envy, that's when it's most likely to control me, and I'm most likely to want to and actually hurt the other person. So having the courage simply to experience the emotion, not as good or bad, as is, that's when I'm in a best position. And that's where, and again, this is going back to Feldman Barrett's theory, action is more important than emotion. What we do matters more than what we feel, because I can feel that longing towards that brownie or towards hurting another person, and yet choose to eat the broccoli and yet choose to act generously. Action matters more.
I love that. And I would say, by the way, trying not to feel that is much more destructive, right? If you try not to feel that envy, it's going to leak out in some insidious way that you are no longer in control of. So it's not an issue of repressing. It's just an issue of separating, just like Tal said, action from emotion, or action from feeling, and say, I should feel everything. I should be a feeling, I am a feeling machine, right? And in my ability, my willingness to feel everything allows me to make choices that are not necessarily dictated by what I feel. And I wanted to say one other very quick thing, because you made me think of it, Tal, about this, like, you know, even the idea of tolerating like envy or sadness. I years ago in my earlier days of trying to work through all this stuff, I'm saying it like I'm past what I'm about to tell you I did, but I'm not. I was having a conversation with someone who was sad, and I was trying to make her feel better, right? And she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to make you feel better." And she said, and she was talking to me about someone close to her having died. And I'm like, I guess I'm trying to make you feel better. And she said, "Why would you try to make me feel better?" And I said, "Well, don't you want to feel better? Like, isn't that a nice thing for me to do?" And she said, "No, I just want you to be, I want my sadness. Like, my sadness right now is what I have left of this person. And I like my sadness. I want to know if you can be with me in my sadness. Like, you don't have to make me feel better, but can you sit here with me?" And I was like sadness, envy. Can you enjoy your envy? Could you be envious and enjoy it? You don't have to act enviously. You don't have to kill the person and take what they have, right? But you can enjoy your envy without acting on it, and your life becomes richer as long as you can deal with like not being guilty about it.
Yeah, and again, it's as I mentioned earlier about your step 4, it's also liberating, because I don't need to get rid of it. I can just live with it.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for your question, Lou. Thank you. So let's take a question from the chat. This is from Toby. How would you address the larger issue of spending your days in things that are important to you, and not spend a life doing something that you would regret at the end of your life? You know, so this is going a little bit to, you know, what Howie was talking about earlier about, you know, what if we have this choice, then, you know, in behavioral economics, well, we'll get greater gains at the end of our life if we do that. But so many of us do things that we know we'll regret later, or we know we'll regret not doing other things later, and yet we do them anyway. Any comments, either Peter or Howie, if you have a comment on this?
I mean, regrets are such an interesting thing. Here's what it brings up for me. It is hardest to spend our time doing the things that are most important to us. I don't entirely know why. I have a guess, which is that if I do something that I really, really care about, and first of all, that's usually a little more challenging than like buying running sneakers on Zappos, right? So it's easier for me to go buy running sneakers than it is to spend time on something I really care about. And because I care so much about it, I become a little more of a perfectionist about it. And it almost becomes an identity issue. If I get this wrong, what does this mean about me? If I want to be a fiction writer and I actually write fiction and it's bad, am I better off just wanting to be a fiction writing and just procrastinating and being frustrated with myself for not getting to it versus actually getting to it and not liking it? So I think it's very tender. The things that we care most about are very tender. And I do think I will bring this back to emotional courage, which is, am I willing to recognize that and say, this is hard for me to sit down and do, and I'm afraid. I had this conversation with someone once who used my own methodology against me or for me, however, whether she was being a critic or an ally. When I said, I'm not writing fiction, I really want to write fiction, right? I've written, 5 books and all nonfiction. I've contributed to 16 other books, all nonfiction. I wrote fiction once a little bit, but I think it was really bad. And I'm not writing any fiction. And she said, oh, what happens when you try to write fiction? And I said, well, she said, why do you think you're not writing fiction? And I said, I think I'm scared. I think I'm scared. And she laughed. I don't think at me, but it felt like that a little bit. No, but she laughed. And then she said, oh, you think you should be able to write without feeling scared? You think you could do that? You think you could write without feeling scared? If I will spend my life trying not to be scared while I'm writing, and I will never write, and that will be a regret. Or I could recognize that being scared is part of writing. And I can sit down and I could be scared and I can write, and then I won't regret. So the question for me around doing hard things that we might regret is am I willing to feel afraid? Am I willing to feel not enough? Am I willing to feel, the risk of exposing myself and the vulnerability? If I'm willing to feel those things, then I'll save the running sneakers for later in the afternoon and I'll write the fiction.
Yeah, amazing. One of the mantras that have guided me since that I remember myself is that courage is not about not having fear, but rather about having fear and going ahead anyway.
Yeah.
Howie, can you jump in, please?
Yeah, I want to just a beautiful answer, Peter. And I want to share, Peter and I had a discussion one day where we're both sort of sheepishly admitting to each other that we tried the 4 steps on ourselves and it didn't really work. And we're like, well, and then we kind of decided or realized, whichever, or rationalized that this really is a process that involves other people. And I think emotional courage is hard. It's hard for me. I think it's hard for Peter, and he's kind of made a career out of it. And I think one of the things that I love about the process we're sharing is that it's a way to help other people need a little bit less emotional courage so they can get started with it. That, the question, how can I change? There's beautiful books on how I can change, but I want to say, if we should share with other people, they come to us and we show them compassion and we show them that we care about them and we show them that we're impressed with what they've already done. And we're not going to slap them and we're not going to hit them over the nose with a wet newspaper. Then all of a sudden they get to relax a little bit and can take more risks because it doesn't feel as scary.
I love that. And I want to speak to Tal, this community. I mean, there's 200 plus people on this call. And my understanding is you're in the profession of helping people. And one of the core beliefs of this book, and one of the core beliefs that we have is we need each other. We need each other. We can't do this alone. That we need each other, and yet the way we end up helping each other is dysfunctional. And there are really functional, really supportive ways to show up for each other so that we sort of travel this journey in the world together and really helping each other. So that's the hope of this book, which is it doesn't sound like it when you read the title and you go like, you can change other people. It sounds a little aggressive, but the underlying hope of the book is that we can see that we could hold each other's hands through what's difficult in life and help each other get there.
Wow. We are unfortunately out of time. I know there are a couple of hands up and there are more questions in the chat, but this is a conversation that we will certainly continue having. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Howie, for writing this book, for initiating this very important conversation. I would just like to go over the 4 steps again before maybe opening up for final words from both of you. So first of all, shifting from a critic to an ally. Second, shifting from problem to outcome. Then asking, where is the opportunity in this problem? And then coming up with an action plan that I have full confidence in initiating and following through. So I know that I'm going to be using this tonight and in the future. Thank you for that. Any final words, Peter, Howie?
I feel a little bit like I used up my final words talking about helping each other.
Yes,
but
I was debating whether to ask or not, because you're right.
But I mean, my final word will be just like a thank you to you, Tal. Like you're such a mensch, and I love you, and I love, it just, I missed you over these past pandemic where we haven't been so connected. And I like looking at all of these people in this community, and I think you're doing such really powerful, righteous work. And it's not easy, and it's hopefully rewarding, but I'm just in awe, and I want to meet more of you, and I'm going to come to events because it's awesome what you're all creating.
Great. Thank you very much. And Howie.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Peter, for your generosity and sharing the spotlight. I just came to kind of ogle. I was just watching the transcript, and Peter, when you called Tal a mensch, the transcript said, Tal, you're such a mansion. So I love that.
Well, this is all virtual, by the way, this mansion behind.
Well, I think we're talking metaphorically and spiritually, and I feel like it's beautiful to see all the faces and to hear all the comments and to see everyone together in this mansion of people all working to help each other get better and be happier. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And yes, indeed, this is what the community is about. It's helping one another. And Peter, Howie, thank you for writing this book and for helping us help others, and by extension, help ourselves as well. Thank you all very much for being here. And as always, take good care of yourselves and others. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.